Before we begin, how are you feeling today? I hope you're okay and taking care of yourself. If today was a bad day, I'm glad you're here. Take a deep breath. This moment is yours. Ready? Let's begin. There's a reason the wilderness still haunts us. For all our technology, all our maps, all our satellite coverage, there are still places where the signal drops, the compass spins, and something older than language waits quietly beneath the trees. The American wilderness is vast, stretching from the icy silence of Tongass to the fog-drenched slopes of the Smokies, from the scorched edges of Chimney Rock to the ancient stillness of Big Thicket. And while most people see it as a place of escape or beauty, some of us know better. This is not a collection of fiction. These are true stories, told by the people who live them. Stories of things seen but never explained. Of voices that should not have known our names. Of footsteps that followed even when we were alone. Each account comes from a real place you can find on a map. But what you won't find is what lives between the lines. You'll hear from hikers, rangers, parents, scientists, each drawn into something they didn't understand until it was too late. Some came back with warnings. Some didn't come back at all. This isn't about monsters. It's about mirrors. About what stares back when the forest gets too quiet. About how nature doesn't just observe, it remembers. So, before we begin, ask yourself this. Have you ever felt watched while alone in the woods? Have you ever heard your own voice echo from the wrong direction? If so, you may already know. The forest doesn't always let go. So let's begin. Not with a scream in the night, but with a man who simply wanted to be alone. Alone with his grief. Alone with his silence. But in the Smoky Mountains, silence sometimes writes back. Story 1. The Trail That Wrote Back. I hadn't written a word in over 3 years. Not since Karen died. Grief does strange things to a man, especially the kind of grief that settles in your bones and whispers that nothing you create will ever matter again. I used to teach literature, wrote a few small books no one ever read, and thought words could save people. But after she was gone, all they did was echo. So I left. Sold the house in Asheville, packed my father's old Bronco, and drove into the woods. I found myself drawn to the Smokies, where my wife and I once hiked before the chemo. It felt right, somehow. Quiet, remote, and empty. Lost Cove Trail was an old route, not even well marked anymore, winding through a dense stretch of forest just south of Cades Cove. Locals said it had been abandoned since the Park Service stopped maintaining it, and hikers rarely bothered anymore. But Frankie Dupree, an old Army vet who now worked part-time checking on trailheads, told me over black coffee at the Ranger Station Diner. That trail remembers things. Just don't be the guy it remembers too well. I laughed at the time. Frankie didn't. Day 1, I set off early with a light pack, a notebook, still blank, and my camera. I told myself this trip wasn't about riding, it was about breathing. But the deeper I went, the more the air felt like ink, thick and waiting. That first night, I set up camp near Creek Bend and found something strange. A phrase carved into the bark of an old sycamore, half rotted but legible. He sat here, thinking of her, wondering why the wind felt like a voice. I stared at it for a long time. The words echoed too closely what I'd just written in my notebook not an hour earlier. It was eerie, sure, but maybe someone else had felt the same. Coincidence. But it happened again. Day 2, deeper into the trail, I found another tree. He dreamed last night of her voice, and it burned. That night, I did dream of Karen. She stood on the back porch in the storm, staring into the trees. I woke up cold and sweating, and the fire had died out entirely. From then on, I started reading the trees as I hiked. Every few miles, always alone, always unannounced, were sentences carved like scars. The grammar shifted, sometimes clipped, sometimes poetic, but the content remained personal. Too personal. He wonders if forgiving himself is a betrayal to her memory. He still wears the ring even though it bites. He wants to scream, but fears what might scream back. These weren't just thoughts, they were mine. By day 4, I didn't know if I was following the trail or if it was following me. I stopped taking photos. I stopped writing. I started talking out loud just to hear a voice, even if it was my own. At sunset, I ran into Frankie. He stood near a dead pine, arms crossed, eyes tired. "You came in too far," he said. "It likes that." I asked him what he meant, what the hell was going on. He looked me over, then said, "It doesn't write things, it remembers. And when you leave pieces of yourself in the woods, grief, guilt, longing, it records them. Like a book that doesn't need ink." He told me he used to patrol this trail before it was closed off. Lost someone too, a daughter. Stayed too long, saw too much. Then he turned and left down a side path I hadn't seen before. When I tried to follow, it was gone. No footprints, no break in the trees, just more silence. That night, I dreamed not of Karen, but of myself. Sitting on a log, carving bark, over and over, mumbling things I hadn't said aloud in years. When I woke, there were words carved into the tree above my tent. "He won't make it out, but maybe he doesn't want to." I packed and ran. The trail felt longer than before, as if the trees had grown while I slept. The forest hummed. At some point, my GPS froze. The trail markers vanished, but the carvings kept appearing. One said, "Frankie won't make it down the trail." I stopped cold. The last one said, "You are not the only one who writes." I don't remember how I got out. I woke up on a park bench near the entrance, shaking, dehydrated, my notebook in my lap, filled cover to cover. Not with my handwriting, pages and pages of words. Some I remembered thinking but never wrote, others I didn't recognize. The last line, "Leave if you must, but it's still right at you." I didn't go back. I sold the cabin, moved into a small apartment near town. And yeah, eventually I started writing again. Real writing. Not out of obligation, but out of need. Not to preserve her, but to rebuild me. I keep the notebook locked away though. Some nights I swear I hear the pages shifting. Listen, if you've lost someone, and I mean really lost them, not just in body but in everything, you'll be tempted to go find a quiet place to bury your grief. And that's okay, but don't bury yourself with it. Trails like Lost Cove don't just remember, they consume. They feed on the parts of you you try to leave behind. If you've ever felt that tug, that pull towards silence, isolation, just one more night alone, ask yourself, are you going into the woods or is something pulling you in? You're not broken for hurting, you're human. And if you've ever been there, really there, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment, share if you're ready. Someone else out there might be walking the same trail and need your voice to turn around. And hey, if these stories stay with you, maybe consider following the channel. I don't do this for views. I do it to reach the folks who need a voice in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, remind you that you're not walking it alone. But not all stories begin in solitude. Some begin with celebration, with bright eyes, a new camera, and a sunset too beautiful not to capture. Until you realize something is capturing you too. Story 2. They waited at Chimney Rock. I used to believe that cameras made you safer. As a content creator, I thought if something ever went wrong during a shoot, at least the footage would help someone figure it out. That was before Chimney Rock. My name is Vanessa Lee. I've been doing outdoor vlogs for 3 years. Trail guides, camp reviews, survival tips. Nothing too spooky. Just me, my gear, and my camera. When my channel hit 100K subs, I decided to celebrate by filming a sunset time-lapse at Chimney Rock State Park in North Carolina. It was a perfect idea. Simple, stunning views, easy hike. Tasha, a freshman media student who'd been helping with editing, offered to tag along. She was bright, full of chaotic Gen Z energy, and obsessed with TikTok. I figured we'd make a fun behind-the-scenes reel. We arrived around 3 p.m., stopped for snacks at a Circle K, and started the hike up. It was warm, clear skies, lots of people heading down as we climbed. By 5, we were mostly alone. I set up my gear near the edge of the overlook while Tasha filmed squirrels doing squirrel things and made jokes about summoning the aesthetic spirits. As the sun dipped behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, she paused, squinting at the tree line. "Do you see them?" she asked. I followed her gaze. Nothing, just trees and fading light. There were like 3 hikers, all standing still. She frowned. Weird vibe. We shrugged it off. Probably just people enjoying the view. The time-lapse finished around 8 p.m. We packed up and debated camping or heading back. I leaned toward camping. Tasha rolled her eyes and muttered something about horror movie logic, but relented. At 10:47 p.m., the first strange thing happened. I was scrolling through footage on my camera when I noticed movement in the background, slow, almost frame by frame, of dark figures in the distance. They didn't walk, they shifted, like dragging themselves forward in stuttered frames. I showed Tasha. She froze. "I swear, those are the same ones I saw earlier," she whispered. "But they're closer now." We heard nothing. No footsteps. No voices. The forest was unnaturally quiet. I turned off the camera and told her we'd leave at dawn. She agreed, but kept glancing behind her like she expected something to lunge from the trees. At 2:13 a.m., I woke up to find her tent empty. Her phone was gone, but her boots were still inside. I grabbed my flashlight and followed a narrow trail behind our site. After 10 minutes, I saw her, standing completely still, arms at her sides, eyes wide open. Tasha. She didn't respond. I reached her, and only then did I notice. Her phone was pointed at me, filming, and her fingers were tapping the screen, but the movement was mechanical, like she wasn't really there. Her mouth opened slowly, and in a voice that wasn't hers, she said, "Upload failed. They're watching." I yanked the phone away and she collapsed into my arms, shaking violently. When she came to, she had no memory of leaving the tent. We packed up before dawn, hiked back in silence, neither of us daring to speak. I didn't check the footage until days later, and when I did, my stomach dropped. There was a shot, just a few seconds long, from Tasha's phone, facing the woods. In the frame, 3 figures stood between the trees, identical in size and posture, heads tilted just slightly. But here's the part that still messes with me. One of them was holding a camera, and in the reflection of the lens, I swear to God, was me. I tried uploading the clip to my channel. Every time the file corrupted, but when I checked analytics, there was a spike at the exact minute I attempted the upload. Views from devices labeled unknown source. The video never went public, but someone saw it. Something saw it. Listen, if you're the kind of person who loves hiking alone, chasing sunsets, or filming in remote areas, let me say this. Not everything you point a camera at wants to be seen, and some of it might be pointing one back. Here's what I learned the hard way. Presence is not the same as safety. Even if you're documenting every second, it doesn't mean you're in control. And if something doesn't want to be recorded, it won't stop at deleting your footage. it might delete you. If you've ever experienced something weird while out filming or hiking, you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Trust your gut. That wrong feeling is real. And if someone you're with starts acting off, don't wait for proof. Get out. Also, look, I'm not here to scare you off nature. I still hike, I still camp, but I don't film everything anymore. Some stories are safer not told through a lens. If you've had moments where the forest felt different, if you've seen something in the corner of your eye that shouldn't be there, drop a comment. Let's not keep those stories to ourselves. You might help someone recognize a danger before it's too late. And hey, if you found this story and want more like it, real ones, from real places, with real people, hit that follow button. No pressure, but I promise, the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. You'd think cameras would be the line between reality and imagination. But what happens when the footage lies and the forest tells the truth? Out west, deep in Olympic National Park, one researcher learned that not all data can be decoded. Story 3. The Red Lights of Olympic. There's something wrong with Olympic National Park. I used to think it was just the fog, that heavy, crawling mist that lingers in your lungs and in your thoughts long after you've left. But it's not the fog, it's what hides behind it. My name is Omar Ramirez. I work for a private ecological consultancy that monitors forest health, wildlife patterns, and environmental data in protected lands. I've hiked in more forests than I can count. Rockies, Appalachians, Mojave, even parts of Alaska. Nothing rattled me. Nothing felt off until Olympic. We were stationed near Lake Kootenai, documenting soil degradation after a heavy season of rainfall. I was there with Dr. Richard Weller, a semi-retired biologist in his 60s, sharp as a scalpel, no nonsense. The kind of guy who wore wool socks with sandals and said things like correlation is not causation even during casual conversations. We had 2 weeks to gather samples, deploy monitoring gear, and log nocturnal data using thermal drones. On the third night, we saw them. We were flying a drone just past 11 p.m. when a red light flickered in the footage. Barely a pulse. Not infrared, not heat. Just a soft, blinking red, like a beacon, but out in the middle of nowhere, beyond the range of any installed markers. Weller thought it was a lens flare or glitch. I wasn't so sure. The next night, we flew the drone again. This time, 3 red lights, equally spaced, in a perfect triangle, stationary. No heat signature, no sound. They didn't move. But the moment I zoomed in, the feed cut out. Drone battery fried. We hiked out the next morning. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The forest felt different, like it was thinking. The deeper we went, the more our GPS lagged. Clocks drifted out of sync. I chalked it up to interference. Weller stayed calm, but I noticed him glancing over his shoulder more than usual. Around 1:12 p.m., we found a clearing. A perfect circle, dead grass, warm soil, no tracks. And in the center, a small metallic object, like an old radio component. Weller touched it, recoiled. Still warm, he muttered, but no heat signature. That night, back at base, our data was gone. Entire hard drives blanked. Drones refused to connect. Weller tried restoring backups. Nothing. Our thermal maps were scrambled with static, but in the frames that survived, the red lights were closer to us. He didn't sleep. Neither did I. The following morning, Weller was gone. His boots were still under his bunk. His keys were in the charger. The only thing missing was his journal. I called in a search. Rangers found no signs, no footprints, no struggle, nothing. He just vanished. That's when the dream started. Every night after, I dreamed of walking through the forest with Weller ahead of me. He never turned around, but I could hear him whispering things I couldn't understand, until one night I did. He said, "You shouldn't have looked." I tried to leave the park the next day, packed my gear, drove south, but the road kept curving back. No matter how far I went, the sign said I was still inside Olympic. After 4 hours, I made it back to camp, without remembering how I turned around. My last night there, I set up every remaining camera, every sensor. I wanted to catch something, anything, but the only footage that survived was from a trail cam aimed at the tent. It showed me, standing outside, staring into the trees, for 7 hours. I don't remember doing that. I left at first light, walked until my legs bled. A ranger found me near Forks, dehydrated and rambling about lights. I lied, told them I was sleep deprived, told them Weller went home early. They never asked questions. They never do in Olympic. Back home, I found Weller's journal in my duffel bag. I swear I didn't pack it. The last page simply said, "They don't take you, they rewrite you." If you're someone who works in nature, trusts tech, believes in logic, good. But don't let that logic blind you to something older, smarter. Things that don't care about your sensors, your charts, or your rules. Because whatever is in those woods, it doesn't want to be understood. It wants to be remembered. I still wake up at 1:12 a.m., cold sweat, red glow on the ceiling. My laptop sometimes opens by itself, showing blank thermal maps with that same triangle pattern. And once, just once, I heard Weller's voice in my headphones during a Zoom call. He whispered, "You're still inside. So here's the thing I need you to hear. If you ever see red lights in a place where there should be none, leave. Don't study them. Don't film them. Don't even acknowledge them. Because the moment you do, they see you too. And if someone you trust tells you something is off, listen. Don't wait for proof. Truth doesn't always come with evidence. Sometimes it comes with a warning, and if you're lucky, a way out. Have you ever had a moment where reality felt like it hiccuped? A place where your memory slipped, or time bent strangely, or your devices glitched only when you looked at something too long? You're not alone. You're not broken. You're just noticing. Drop a comment. Share if you've been there. Someone might see your story and finally feel seen. And if you want more stories like this, real stories from real places that still mess with my head, follow the channel. I'll keep the lights on, just long enough to get you through the next one. And while some terrors come through flickering screens and glitching drones, others wear faces we know. In Texas, a mother discovered that what's waiting in the woods sometimes wears the face of her child. Story 4, Black-Eyed in Big Thicket. I've worked night shifts at hospitals, driven across Texas during tornado warnings, and once pulled a man twice my size out of a flipped truck with nothing but adrenaline and duct tape. But nothing, not one thing, prepared me for what I saw in the woods behind our campsite that night. Nothing prepares you to see your child standing in front of you. Twice. My name is Chimney Wilson. I'm a 32-year-old mom, full-time nurse, and part-time troop leader for a small group of Girl Scouts and Junior Explorers in Polk County, Texas. My son, Caleb, is 9, bright, curious, and fearless to a fault. We live in a trailer park just outside Livingston, and I try to give him as much normalcy and adventure as I can. That's why I volunteered to help organize a weekend camping trip to Big Thicket National Preserve. It was supposed to be simple. 2 nights under the stars, a bit of fishing, campfire stories, and s'mores. We brought a small group, 4 kids, including Caleb and his best friend Tyler, and 2 other moms. We set up at a site near the Woodlands Trail, where the trees grow thick and crooked, like they're leaning in to whisper secrets to each other. The first night went smooth. The kids laughed themselves breathless, chasing fireflies. We turned in around 10 p.m. At 2:19 a.m., I woke up to the sound of soft laughter outside the tent. Caleb's laugh. I unzipped the flap and peeked out. He was standing near the tree line with Tyler. They were holding hands, looking into the woods like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. I called out. They didn't react, just kept staring. I got out, heart pounding, and walked toward them. When I reached the spot, only Caleb was there, alone. "Where's Tyler?" I asked. He blinked, confused. "He went back to bed with you," he said. Back in the tent, Tyler was there, fast asleep, snoring. I checked the other kids, all asleep. No one else had moved. I told myself I was just tired. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe Caleb sleepwalked. But the next day, Tyler showed me his GoPro footage. He loved documenting everything. Said he was going to start his own YouTube channel one day. The footage showed Caleb and him whispering outside. But there was a third figure. A small boy. Same size as Caleb. Same hoodie, same face, but black eyes. No whites, no blink. Tyler said the boy asked him to follow. Said they'd find the hollow place where no one ever gets scared again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the fire, coffee in hand, flashlight ready, ears straining for movement. At 3:12 a.m., I saw her. It looked like me, sitting by the fire, wearing my jacket, sipping my coffee. Only, I was watching her from behind a tree. She turned her head just enough for me to see her eyes. Pitch black, empty. And then, she smiled. When I ran back to the tent, Caleb was gone. I screamed for help. The other moms bolted awake. We searched with flashlights and frantic breaths, found him 15 minutes later, near the trail's edge. He was sitting calmly, humming a song I hadn't taught him since he was 3. When I asked what happened, he looked at me like I was the imposter. "Why are you crying, Mommy? You were with me the whole time." The next morning, we packed up early. No campfire songs, no jokes. Even the birds seemed quieter. A few weeks later, Tyler's mom sent me a clip from the GoPro he'd forgotten to delete. It showed me standing by the fire, but it wasn't me, because I watched that clip, and in the background, the real me is visible, watching from behind a tree. The thing in the video looked just like me, but when it smiled, its mouth didn't move right. Too wide, too slow, like someone puppeteering flesh. Look, I know how this sounds. I do. But if you've ever looked at your child and, for just a split second, thought, that's not them, even though you'd never say it out loud, then you understand. There are things in the woods that don't need to hurt you. They just want to replace you. And they start with your kids. I haven't taken Caleb camping since. He doesn't ask. Sometimes I find drawings in his notebook, little stick figures with all black eyes. When I ask who they are, he says, they're the ones who wait. Maybe this was just one nightmare weekend. Maybe the big thicket is full of shadows that play tricks. Or maybe it's full of things that remember us better than we remember ourselves. So here's what I need you to hear, especially if you're a parent. Listen to your gut. If something feels off with your kid, don't brush it off. Kids don't always know how to say I'm scared. Sometimes they just change. And if you're the one feeling off, if you're looking in the mirror and something about your reflection seems delayed, leave the woods. Don't turn around. Don't respond to voices that sound like your own. You're not alone. I see you. If you've ever had a moment, camping, hiking, even at home, where something felt just wrong, drop a comment. You're not crazy. Some places wear faces. And if you want more stories like this, real stories from real people in places the maps mark but don't explain, stick around. Follow the channel. There's more coming, and I'll be here to tell it to you. as long as I'm still me. But even when the children are safe, the memories aren't. In Montana, a man spent his final night in a fire tower that remembered too much, including a version of himself he never wanted to meet. Story 5. The Last Watch at Kootenai. When you've worked in the forest for over 30 years, you stop being surprised by things. Strange animal calls, hikers who swear they saw ghosts, even the occasional off-grid hermit with a shotgun and a stare that lasts too long. It's all part of the job, but there was something about that last night at the fire tower that made me feel like I'd been living someone else's story without knowing it. My name is Hank Dillard, 59 years old, Kootenai National Forest Ranger, now retired, mostly. I spent most of my adult life rotating between fire lookouts, managing trails, and keeping people from doing stupid things in the woods. It was a good life, quiet, predictable, until my final solo shift at the old Highline Tower near the Yak River, my last watch. The tower was a classic, built in the 60s, wood creaked with every gust, paint peeling like sunburned skin. Still had the original crank radio, no cell service, no backup Wi-Fi like the newer stations. Just me, the trees, and the wind. I brought black coffee, a copy of The Old Man and the Sea, and a flask. I promised myself I wouldn't touch unless things got real boring. They didn't. It started small. On the first night, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps circling the base of the tower. No vehicle, no radio call, just slow, deliberate pacing. I shined my light. Nothing. The next morning I found footprints, my own boots, but they led to the tower, not from it. I hadn't walked that path. Second night, same time, I saw a figure through the window, standing in the clearing, maybe 30 yards out. Tall, stocky, wearing a uniform. My uniform. I called out. It didn't move, just stared. When I blinked, it was gone. Now, I'm not one to jump at shadows. You spend enough time in the woods, your mind learns to play tricks to fill the silence. But this wasn't tricks. This was deliberate. Like someone was trying to remind me of something I forgot. Enter Ricky. Ricky Callahan was a ranger like me, 20 years older, long retired, lived alone in a cabin near Yak. He used to work that same tower. I'd met him once or twice at retiree breakfasts. Quiet guy, always muttering to himself. On the third day of my shift, he showed up without warning, hiking stick in hand, out of breath but grinning like he'd found something he'd lost. "Saw your name on the log," he said. "Figured I'd better come check before the tower checks you." I offered coffee. He refused. Said caffeine made them more active. I asked what the meant. He just looked out the window and said, "You ever feel like the forest keeps a copy of you after a while? Like it memorizes your walk, your voice, the things you mutter in your sleep?" I didn't answer. That night, he stayed with me in the tower. We sat mostly in silence. At 2:17 a.m., we both heard it. Boots on the stairs. Heavy, slow, one step at a time. Ricky stood up, looked at me and said, "Whatever you do, don't speak to it." Then the door creaked open. I don't know how to explain what I saw. It was me. Same face, same faded patch on the shoulder. Even the scar on my temple from falling off a bike when I was 8. But the eyes were wrong. Flat, glossy, like someone had drawn them in pencil. It stepped in, stood at the edge of the room, and waited, breathing slow. I felt cold. Not the kind from wind, but the kind that rises from the earth when something ancient stirs. Then Ricky stepped between us. "You've done enough," he said. "Leave him." The copy tilted its head. Then slowly, silently, it backed out, one step at a time, and vanished down the stairs. The next morning, Ricky was gone. No note, no prints. just the smell of pipe smoke lingering in the tower. I finished my shift, didn't sleep another second, hiked down on the last day and handed in my keys without looking back. Now, I live in a small duplex outside Libby. No woods nearby. Concrete comforts me now, but sometimes, just past 2 a.m., I swear I hear boots on the stairs outside my bedroom. And once, I caught a reflection in the window that wasn't quite mine. I think the tower keeps pieces of you. Not out of malice, not even intentionally. It just remembers. And if you stay too long, it replays you. Here's what I've come to believe, and maybe this only makes sense to folks who've spent years in solitude. Nature doesn't just listen, it absorbs, it mirrors. And sometimes, when we're alone, it gives us back a version of ourselves we forgot existed or tried to bury. If you work in remote places, especially alone, check in on yourself more often than your surroundings. Notice the small shifts. A word you never use suddenly slipping from your mouth. A gesture that feels unfamiliar. A thought that sounds like yours but isn't. And if you ever see yourself where you're not supposed to be, don't engage, don't speak, get out. If you've ever experienced anything like this, if your reflection ever felt delayed, if your footsteps ever echoed too close, drop a comment. You're not imagining it, you're being remembered. And if you want more stories like this, real ones, from the people who've lived them, consider following the channel. I'll keep sharing, as long as I'm still the one doing the talking. And sometimes, the thing that follows you isn't behind you at all. It walks beside you. Our final story takes us to Alaska, where the snow is silent, the trees are tall, and nothing echoes quite like your own voice, until it answers back. Story 6. Don't follow me in Tongass. Somewhere between the silence and the snow, I lost myself. Not in the poetic way people talk about when they take a trip to find who they are. No, I mean, I literally lost myself. My name's Calvin Cho. I'm a 27-year-old nature photographer based out of Seattle. I do freelance work, mostly wilderness content for adventure brands. I don't do weddings, I don't do people, just trees, mountains, rivers. I like silence, clean lines, natural light, nothing staged. That's why, in early February, I took a solo trip to Tongass National Forest in Alaska. I wanted something raw, untouched. I wanted the cold. Something about it makes you feel honest, like the air's too sharp to lie through. I flew into Juneau, stayed 2 nights at a cheap hostel, then rented a snowmobile and rode out toward the forest edge. My gear was minimal: Canon EOS R5, solar battery pack, GPS beacon, tent, coffee. I left a message with my editor. I'd be gone 5 days, back by the 6th. The first 2 nights were uneventful, just snow, silence, and the soft groan of distant trees under wind. I shot some of the best photos of my life. Elk silhouetted against blue dusk, a frozen river that looked like glass. My breath captured mid-air like spirit threads. Then, on the 3rd morning, I saw him. At first, I thought it was a reflection. I was standing by the tree line, adjusting the aperture, when I noticed someone about 100 yards off, partially hidden, barely moving. He wore dark clothes. His camera looked like mine. Same beanie, same gloves. I called out. He turned and walked into the trees. I didn't follow. That night, I dreamed being followed. In the dream, I was walking through knee-high snow, and someone behind me was mimicking every movement I made. Same steps, same breath, just a second behind. But when I turned around, there were no footprints, only mine. I woke up to a beeping noise. My GPS beacon had reset. All the logs wiped. My phone camera roll was full of photos I hadn't taken. Each one a slightly off version of shots I'd actually captured. Same compositions, but different lighting, different me. The next morning, I ran into Kimberly. She was my ex, a travel blogger I dated 3 years ago. Last I heard, she was in Argentina, but there she was, standing by my campsite, pale-faced and shivering. "I saw you in a dream," she said. "You called me here." I didn't know what to say. She was confused, shaking, said she booked a last-minute flight after waking from a dream where I was lost in the snow and whispering her name. Something about that felt wrong, like it wasn't my voice calling her. That night, she insisted on staying. We set up a second tent. She tried to laugh it off, her way of coping, but her eyes kept darting to the trees. At 2:03 a.m., I woke to her screaming. She pointed at a shape just beyond the tree line. I saw it too. A figure, my size, my posture, kneeling in the snow, facing away. Its arms moved in a slow, ritualistic motion, like adjusting a lens. Then it stood and ran toward me. I don't remember grabbing the flashlight, don't remember tackling Kimberly or dragging her into my tent, but I remember the moment the zipper jammed, and a hand, my hand, reached under the flap. It didn't feel human, too cold, too still, and then it was gone. In the morning, Kimberly begged me to leave with her. I agreed. We packed fast. No breakfast, no coffee. But when we tried to hike out, the trail looped. Every landmark repeated. A bent tree, a ravine, a split rock. At one point, we passed a set of tracks heading the opposite direction, identical to ours. We weren't just lost. We were being rewritten. On the 5th night, I dreamt of myself standing over Kimberly as she slept, camera in hand, whispering, "Don't follow me." I woke up holding the camera. The lens was pointed at her. I left before sunrise. I didn't say goodbye. I don't even know if she woke up. Something inside me whispered that if I stayed another hour, I wouldn't leave. Not really. Something else would. I walked until my legs bled, tossed the GPS, tossed the camera, found a ranger station hours later and collapsed. When I came to, they said I'd been missing for 12 days. I told them I was alone. I didn't mention Kimberly. I looked her up a week later. She never came to Alaska. Her blog hasn't updated in 4 months. Sometimes I get emails from her account. Just photos of me, sleeping, walking, staring into the snow. Only, it's not me. If you're someone who spends time alone in the wild, especially remote, untouched places, hear me when I say this. You are never truly alone. The forest doesn't want to hurt you. It wants to mirror you. And if it decides it likes your shape, it may keep it. That voice calling you deeper into the woods, that familiar silhouette standing just out of focus, it might not be a memory, it might be an invitation. If you've ever felt like something was walking just behind you, copying your steps, waiting for you to turn around, don't follow, don't answer, don't stay. And if you felt something like this, if the woods ever handed you back a version of yourself that felt slightly wrong, leave a comment, share it. Someone might need to hear it before they take one step too far. And if you want to hear more stories like this, true ones from real places, told by people who walk the edge, follow the channel. I'll be here as long as I'm still me. So now you've heard them all. 8 stories, 8 people, 8 forests that never quite let go. But before we leave the woods behind, there's one more thing I want you to remember. If you've made it this far, through all 8 stories, then maybe you've started to notice a pattern. It's not just about ghosts or cryptids or shadows in the trees. It's about reflection, replacement, repetition. Each of the people you've heard from, Calvin, Shania, Hank, Vanessa, Omar, and the others, they didn't just encounter something terrifying. They were recognized by it. The forest didn't attack them. It studied them, echoed them, in some cases, rewrote them. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. Not that something is out there in the woods, but that it wants to become you. It wears your smile, borrows your voice, follows your trail, until one day you look in the mirror and realize the only version of you that made it back might not be the one who went in. But in every one of these stories, there's also something else, something I hope you noticed. A decision, a moment when the person had to choose. Trust their gut or dismiss it. Turn back or go deeper. Speak or stay silent. Those moments mattered. So here's the part that does belong to you. Trust yourself. If you ever feel the air shift, the trees lean closer, or your thoughts echo when no one's around, pay attention. Don't let the rational world convince you that your instincts are just fear. Sometimes fear is truth in disguise, and if you have been through something you can't explain, share it. Tell someone, leave a comment. These stories aren't here to scare you into silence. They're here so you won't feel alone, because the forest will always be there, waiting, watching. But if we speak the truth out loud, if we bring these things into the light, they lose just a little of their power. Thank you for walking this path with me. I'll be here. And if you're still you, I hope you will be too.